The predator universe is filled with a number of alien species, and the entire universe appears to be a playground for the titular alien species to hunt down other creatures. While the predators primarily target humans, there are other species, ranging from xenomorphs and river ghosts, who plague this universe. All the alien species have their own features and abilities, and some of them have often been pushed to the background in this franchise. Today, we will explore some of the most prominent alien species from the predator universe and tell you all about them. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Yautja. Before we explore any other species in the predator universe, let us look at the Yautja, also known as the predators to the hunters. These creatures were known for hunting other species, and they typically like to go after humans for the sake of sports or honor. The Yautja are said to be the descendants of the Hishkuten, who lived on Yautja Prime over a millennium ago. The Yautja were a sentient, humanoid species known for using highly advanced technology, camouflage skills, and weapons such as blades and spears to attack other species. Their technology enabled them to use adaptive camouflage or even plasma weapons, and their weapons were resistant to the acidic effect of the xenomorph's blood. They traveled across the universe in starships, and they were known for mutilating their victims and even treating them as trophies. Typically, the Yautja considered the xenomorphs to be worthy prey, and they were even known for breeding young xenomorphs. They would then hunt these xenomorphs, and there was even an initiation ritual wherein young predators would try to capture these xenomorphs. Yautja typically had huge hair-like appendages on their head, mandibles, reptilian skin, and no noses. Typically, their mandibles conveyed their emotions, and flared mandibles meant anger or surprise, while sometimes they even grinned or showed interest by clicking these mandibles together. The Yautja had some distinct features even among themselves, and they were usually around 7 to 8 feet tall, with light or dark skin. They were quite resilient and unaffected by bacteria, viruses, or even severe injuries due to gunshot wounds. They were extremely powerful creatures who could easily unmatch any human in combat and even rip their heads off their bodies with just bare hands. Xenomorphs. Xenomorphs are one of the most dangerous species in the predator universe, and they were hive-based endoparasitoids with quite an extensive life cycle. These creatures originated from the planet Xenomorph Prime, and they typically required a host body in order to reproduce. Xenomorphs latched onto different species, and the human phenotype was 7 to 9 feet tall with a huge tail and an oblong head. Xenomorphs also had a queen, who was typically twice as large as a regular xenomorph. These creatures were known for using sneaky ways to lure their victims in, and they communicated in high-pitched hisses and shrieks. Xenomorph's life cycle went through multiple stages, wherein they grew from an egg and also latched onto a human body before finally taking an adult form. These creatures' bodies were also filled with acidic blood that could dissolve just about anything. It was quite dangerous to attack a xenomorph, as their blood would only pose a danger to oneself. However, the Yautja seemingly had specialized weapons that worked against xenomorphs and did not dissolve when they came in touch with their blood. Their acidic blood served no purpose except that it helped these creatures defend themselves. There is no concrete origin story for these creatures, but it is implied that the engineers created a biological weapon known as the black liquid, and the xenomorphs were later derived from this liquid. This liquid was used to infect various life forms and another species known as the Hammerpedes that was exposed to the same fate. Xenomorphs also share some traits with these Hammerpedes, and there are also a lot of variations in every single xenomorph. These variations typically arise from the individual differences in their hosts' bodies that are passed on to these alien creatures when they latch onto them. Engineers, or space jockeys. The engineers were an extraterrestrial species that were known for experimenting on other life forms, and they typically devoted themselves towards experimenting on xenomorphs, also known as malakak or space jockeys. These creatures were tall humanoids, and there was a lot of variation between them. There are at least 2 species within the broad subtype, and they are referred to as engineers and space jockeys. While the engineers were pale, hairless humanoids with glossy black eyes, space jockeys had an alien appearance, and they also had some special telepathic abilities. Engineers were known to be progenitors of the human race, and they wore an exoskeleton suit that gave them an alien-like appearance. On the other hand, space jockeys naturally had an organic alien body, similar to the exoskeleton suit worn by the engineers. Engineers were extremely powerful beings that possessed superhuman strength, and they could even kill a human with just one punch. They had even faced Yautjas and proved to be successful in overpowering these titular characters in the Predator franchise. It is suggested that they were also responsible for creating, at least mutating, the xenomorphs, and they possibly even lived alongside these creatures. Engineers had huge temples on the moon LV-223, where they had pictures of xenomorphs that suggest that the engineers even worshipped them. On the other hand, these creatures even clash with the Yautja, who sometimes even tried to hunt space jockeys. These creatures also had advanced technology and were somewhat responsible for creating and mutating other alien species in the Predator universe. Over time, the engineers ended up getting dissatisfied with their experimentations, and they then decided to use the black liquid as a weapon to destroy these creatures. The black liquid was essentially a living organic compound that could fuse itself to the biochemical structure of other species, change their DNA, and even mutate them completely. However, the engineers eventually fell into their own trap and were exposed to the dangerous organic compound on LV-223. Hammerpedes. Hammerpedes were another alien species that were said to be created as a result of the engineer's creation, known as the black liquid. They were worm-like creatures that were first discovered in the engineer's temple on LV-223 in 2093. These creatures seem to have mutated from the LV-223 moon's worms, which were exposed to the black liquid when it was accidentally split on the moon's grounds. As a result of this accident, the worms mutated into dangerous creatures whose heads resembled a serpent. Moreover, they also had the same acidic blood as xenomorphs, and they were also considered to be a prototype of the xenomorph known as the facehugger. Hammerpedes were extremely strong creatures, and they often emerged from within the ground and attacked any human in their way. They typically wrapped their bodies around humans, and they were so powerful that they could break a human's bones by coiling themselves around it. They sometimes even crawled inside a human's mouth, which suggests that they sometimes even latched to their bodies. They were notorious for killing their host, and it is suggested that they either ate their victims' insides or laid eggs that would feed on the dead host's body in order to grow. To kill its victim, a hammerpede would attach itself to its arm and then swiftly enter its mouth. While it passed through its victim's host, the human would end up dying due to suffocation, after which this creature would feed on them. They were very aggressive creatures who would attack just about anything that crossed their path, and they were around the same size as regular snakes or cobras. However, they had no eyes, and it was suggested that they detect a victim by sensing their movements or heat signatures. Trilobite. Trilobites were another alien species that were derived as a result of the engineers' experimentation with the black liquid. They were a prototype version of the xenomorph subtype known as facehuggers, and they had numerous tentacles and small tendrils that could be retracted within their bodies. A human doctor named Dr. Holloway had ended up consuming some black liquid without realizing what he had done, and this liquid then spread through his system and mutated his genes. Before realizing what happened, Dr. Holloway got intimate with Dr. Shaw and accidentally impregnated her. The mutated DNA resulted in the creation of an alien baby, who we now know as Trilobite, and Dr. Shaw went through tremendous pain as it started growing inside her at a speedy rate. Eventually, the baby had to be surgically removed from the mother's womb on board the Prometheus ship, and it soon developed into a tentacled being that resembled a facehugger. The creature's sole aim was to find a host body and then impregnate them with an embryo that would grow up into the deacon. The deacon emerged from within the host's body by ripping their chest apart, and they made an appearance in the 2012 film called Prometheus. Amengi. The Amengi were initially an independent species who used to rule over the Hish, but they had quite a tumultuous history wherein the Hish overthrew their rule and enslaved them. These insectoid creatures started conquering other worlds before they had run out of natural resources, and they wanted to enslave other species and then strip them of their resources. They had also once invaded Yautja Prime and then enslaved the Hish species. They spent many years using the Hish as their source of entertainment, food, and labor, until one day a Hish named Kail led an uprising against them. At this point, the Amengi were slaughtered into huge numbers by the Hish, who finally captured the Amengi's technology and also enslaved the rest of them. These creatures looked like huge cockroaches, and their bodies were fitted with a number of technological devices. They also had double-lobed heads as well as wings, but these wings were clipped off their backs as children. They had 6 limbs that were divided into 2 sets of legs and 1 set of arms. These creatures also fed on a honey-like liquid substance, and their culture was even described as technically fixated. The Amengi were an advanced species concerned with growing and progressing their society, and they even built weapons, such as the Mind Prober. They were also intrigued by puzzles or even general problems, and they strived to overcome any such issues, even when they were enslaved. River ghosts. River ghosts were sentient extraterrestrial creatures who were often hunted by the super predators on their hunting grounds on Game Preserve Planet. They appeared as humanoids with pale skin and a strange exoskeleton that resembled insects. They were dropped on the Game Preserver planet to be hunted, which implies that they had good speed and they were worthy of the super predator's time. River ghosts were named after Carrie Jones's personal encounter with a strange ghost-like entity near a river, but these species are also called ramrummers, Guyver aliens, or even red herrings. They spoke in low shrieks, and their voices also appeared wispy and flittery while they approached their prey. River ghosts also had tiny insects living on their exoskeletons, and they seem to have some connection with these creatures. While we don't know the purpose of these insects, they help the river ghosts to keep their skin clean and bacteria-free. River ghosts were more intelligent and faster than humans, and they also outran the humans and proved to be quite difficult to capture on the Game Reserve planet. These creatures did not have any eyes, but they did have a sensory organ that was covered by a flap in the center of their forehead. They also had huge talons on their hands, as well as some strange wing-like features on their back. Hellhounds. Hellhounds were essentially canines that were trained by the Yautja, and they were one of those alien species that were domesticated by the predators. In order to flush out their prey, the super predators used to train hellhounds and then use them while hunting humans or other species on the Game Preserve planet. They were extremely aggressive creatures, and they sometimes hunted in packs to track down humans for the super predators. These creatures were also highly resistant to gunfire or any such weapons, and they couldn't be easily taken down. They did not look similar to hounds and instead shared some features with reptiles. They had scales on their bodies, and they also had some horns and a tusk on their heads. Tecsecs were essentially mechanical weapons that were inspired by xenomorphs, and they were a minor alien species with ceramic skin. These creatures were created by the Libert's AI computer mainframe, and they were initially supposed to be background characters. Eventually, Tecsecs were weaponized, and they were used to clean out any alien hives due to their resemblance with the xenomorphs. Eventually, Tecsecs were tasked with the responsibility of locating Big Mama and Karen Delacroix, and These characters appeared in Aliens vs. Predator, Deadliest of the Species. Tecsecs were around a few feet tall and were bipedal creatures with yellow visors that acted as a substitute for eyes. They also had sharp claws at the ends of their arms and feet, and their bodies were resistant to heat or blasts. Their bodies were also designed to have dorsal tube-like appendages that could also be reconfigured if they needed these appendages to look like weapons. They did lack a key xenomorph feature, that is their tails. Regardless, tecsecs were viewed as equals to the xenomorphs, and they even had some advanced plasma weapons that made them stand out. Drukathi. The Drukathi were quite an ancient race of alien species that lived in the Milky Way galaxy, and they were known for their advanced technology and equipment. Even the Yautja species were scared of the Drukathi, even though these species had already moved on from fighting predators and so on. Eventually, the Drukathi got close to the Xenomorph XX-121 species and even started breeding them. The Drukathi were also very intelligent beings known for their biotechnology, and even their spacecraft had an organic appearance. Their LV-178 was apparently even grown biologically, and it was a living organism. The Drukathi were quite a mysterious species that came into existence even before the Yautja, and they were quite feared by their species. They had 6 limbs consisting of 4 legs and 2 arms, and were around 12 feet tall. In the year 2159, Drukathi were discovered in the Predator universe on the LV-178 ship by the crew on DSMO Marion, and it seemed that the ship had been quite damaged. Furthermore, the ship also seemed to be a breeding ground for xenomorphs, and the crew also found a bunch of harvested ovomorphs on the abandoned ship. Over time, the Drukathi were overpowered by the xenomorphs, and their entire population was wiped out. The ship's ruins pointed towards the fact that this ancient species was actually wiped out over millions of years ago. At some point in the future, the founders discovered an artificial planet that seemed to share some features with the Drukathi civilization and their work with biotechnology. The place was being looked after by the Phase, who was created by the Drukathi to look after the artificial planet.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good.
Predator dogs. Predator dogs, or even predator hounds, were non-sapient creators that were used by the upgrade predators. They came from Yautja Prime, and they were essentially chimeric canines created with the help of hybridization techniques. They were essentially created with the help of a base genome that belonged to an unidentified species, and the Yautja DNA, as well as some other genomes, were then added during the hybridization process. These creatures shared some resemblance with the Yautja due to their DNA contribution, and they had the same tan skin, green blood, and dreadlocks as the Yautja. The upgrade predator had exoskeleton armor that offered protection from bullets and blades, and the predator hounds also had a similar exoskeleton armor. These creatures had weaker internal organs as compared to other species, so they could be injured quite easily. In one such instance, Quinn had killed a predator hound by just firing grenades at its throat, thereby causing it to explode. Predator dogs shared some similarities with the hellhounds, but a key difference lay in the fact that hellhounds served the super predators while these creatures worked with the upgrade predators. Predator dogs were also extremely adept at tracking someone down or even retrieving an object or individual, and the upgrade predator often sent them to find equipment or objects. Kiaja were alien creatures who resided on the Yautja's homeworlds, and they were typically known for their role in the traditions of the Yautja. As a tradition, young hunters were sent in trios to hunt down a Kiaja and then kill it in order to be seen as an adult. These young hunters required tremendous training and practice to become accomplished enough to hunt a Kiaja, and even experienced adults had a hard time hunting one of these creatures on their own. While the Kiaja themselves did not serve many purposes to the Yautja, besides being hunted down, their bodies were used to create ceremonial masks for the older predators. When the young performed the rite of passage, where they hunted a Kiaja, the older Yautja would wear a mask made from the body of a Kiaja. This mask signified the unity and teamwork of the Yautja, and it had 3 circles on it that highlighted the fact that a group of 3 Yautja hunters had killed the Kiaja. Conclusion. To sum it up, the predator universe has certainly introduced us to a whole new world of alien species that are ruthless and scary in their own ways. From xenomorphs to predator dogs, this universe is filled with aliens that haunt each corner of the world, and we humans can only hope to stay out of their path for our safety. And if you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!